Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Everyday Conversations regarding mental health. Because there's nothing on the telly, we're coming to you live from the Heale Manor. We've got a guest in tonight. I'm hoping that there's another guest going to come in a bit later, but for now, it's me and one guest, and I'll bring her on shortly. But if this is your first time here, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and you get notified when we go live. So I do two shows. A Tuesday we have a live awesome quiz every Tuesday, and we go live at 8 o'clock for an hour, and there's some great quizzes. You can go back and have a look at that channel and do the quizzes, and all you need to do is work out your score and just pop your score into the chat box, and you can do it retrospectively after, or you can come and join us live. It's great fun doing it live. And then this channel is all about destigmatizing mental health, and we're going to look at all aspects of mental health, whether it's looking at something like just having a little wobble. It's okay not to be okay, and if you're not feeling yourself, have a chat with yourself. If you're not feeling great, find someone to have a chat with. If you're still not feeling really great, then approach the doctor and just have a word and say, look, I'm not feeling that, blah 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 blah, and they may be able to help. Anyway, we'll get into that as we go through. So this is what the channel's all about. It's all about talking about mental health, normalising it, bringing it into everyday conversations. Because what we don't want is to stigmatise it. We want to bring it out into the open, because everybody, sooner or later in their life, has a little bit of a trouble with up here. The problem with mental health is you can't see it. Well, some people you can, but as a general rule, you can't see it. It's not like having a broken leg, for instance. You break your leg, you go to hospital, and they can put a big plaster on it and sort you out that way. Mental issues are different. They affect people differently. Everybody is different. For some people, it could be a trauma. Could be a drama as well, but a trauma in early life that comes back and bites them. So, yeah, so that's what we're looking at. We're going to look at different aspects of it. This evening, we're going to look at, with our guests, we're going to talk about some wellness, how to keep yourself physically and mentally fit, and how the two can marry together to keep you on the straight and narrow. So, without too much of ado, I'm going to bring in my guest. So, are you ready? Good evening, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm great. And I am so thankful that you are doing this and making this normal, because we do need to talk about mental health way more than we do. So I
Absolutely.
truly appreciate that.
It's, I mean, I don't know anybody that hasn't had some sort of issue. I mean, it might just be something very minor, or it could be complex PTSD. And I've seen a vast range of it in my time, particularly when I was a welfare officer. I saw on a daily basis people come in with issues of some sort, and it can all be helped. Everybody can be helped. I don't know what it's like in America, but here the what do you call it? The mental health teams are under so much pressure. There's so many people that are struggling in this country, and the NHS is on its knees. Um, and I think that the biggest problem with the NHS is that there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and the chiefs tend to be fairly toxic, which is why the Indians are sort of leaving the, the reservation as such. So you see it occasionally, a toxic environment. You're working in a toxic environment, and people put up with it so long, and then they've had enough and do the right thing and walk away. Now, what they've done with the NHS, they've employed people that shouldn't even be there. I mean, they've got diversity officers, they've got living experience officers that are paying sort of seven figures, 5 and 6 figure salaries, when the the nurses on the front line are on sort of about £37,000 a year average across the board. So nurses aren't poorly paid, but they're not fantastic paid compared with these non-jobs effectively. and that then brings in this whole toxic environment where you've got managers not managing but putting impossible tasks on the troops to deliver, and they can't. They're making these things up that don't work. Just
Yeah,
impossible
and that's what they're
targets.
seeing. Yeah, they're seeing more and more of that with the military. The more research that's being done about the PTSD and how it's affecting, and it's not anyone who's under that long-term stress, like every day for a long period of time, is definitely going to suffer. And I'm not sure why we're not doing something to help them.
Yeah, and it's and it all starts, um, I think, at the top, at the government level, where they're looking at different aspects. Oh, hang on.
It's all right. I'll talk. I think the other thing that when you talk about that, we're looking at things differently. Our parents used to parent us, and now we ask the schools to do it. We're asking everyone else to do it. We're also, it's that person that comes back from war, or that person who's been, and even if they're not, if you are somebody who is in any job that's a very stressful job for a long period of time, or maybe your life, um, because of circumstances. And this is where we have to move away from the government, and we have to move into the community, to each other, and checking in with each other. And really, I love that question of, how are you really?
Yeah.
Like, really asking that question and paying attention to the people around us, and how can we support them to get them the care that they need.
Hmm. And that question should really only be asked if you've got the time to ask it.
Exactly,
The
exactly.
last thing you want to do is see somebody that's struggling and say, "How are you?" And they say, "I'm okay." No, how are you? How are you really? And then they start opening up. Oh, sorry, I've got a, I've got a dash. So you open a
Yes,
can of
that's so
worms,
rude.
and then you do one. That's, that's not funny. It's not clever. And then you make them feel an awful lot worse than they were to start with. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and our youth too. That was the other thing. I was having a conversation with someone, and our teenagers, the pressure that's on them to make decisions and do these things, they're having and struggling more than they ever have
Mm.
before. because we're putting undue pressure that doesn't need to be there. You know,
Yeah.
it's funny because we're asking them, what do you want to be? What do you want to decide? Where do you want to go to school? But you can ask someone in maybe their 40s or 50s, and they may not still know what they want to do. So why
Yeah.
are we asking a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, what do they want to be? What do they want to do? And
Mm.
putting that pressure on them so early in life when we all have the opportunity to change and be, we just need to take some of that pressure off.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the problems nowadays is where they're putting a massive amount of pressure, particularly on young people, about their sexuality, their whether they're in the right gender. I mean that's getting out of hand at the moment. And like offering sort of 10, 11 year olds puberty blockers. What's that about? I mean, that is going to damage somebody beyond. It's going to not only damage them physically, it's going to damage them mentally. And they shouldn't be having those questions. They shouldn't be dealing with that. I know it's
Yeah,
a
and
real thing.
it is
This
yes.
dysphoria, this gender dysphoria, but it's in a tiny um, part of the population. So it doesn't need highlighting to everybody. Somebody that's having those issues um, will get the help when they need it, but they don't need it at the age of sort of 10, 11, 12. Um, just it just beggars belief, and and trying to turn everybody. I don't know what you see in America, but over here they're pushing the LGBTQXYZ all the time, all the time. They just it just why can't they just get on with their lives like normal heterosexual people get on with their lives? Why can they not just live a normal life? Why do they have to inflict that on everybody when there's no need to?
Well, it's
It's,
interesting because we've had women's rights have come and then they come back again. I mean,
yeah,
when I was a small child, it was burn the bras and and it
I'm
came
all in
back
favour of
again.
that. Trust me.
Of course you are.
Yes.
But some things, I feel like on how people decide to live, I won't tell anyone how they need to live other than here if we talk about how to improve our mental health, how to give us a leg up. I mean, I will say, what do you do when you get sick? Like, what are the first three things that you think of? Okay, I don't feel well. Okay, now what do I need to do to feel better? For
Yeah.
me, typically it is I need to increase my water, I need to sleep a little bit more, and I need to give myself the space to heal
Mm.
instead
Yeah.
of but we tend to on the mental health things, you're under pressure or whatever's going on and you're trying we've come from this push when what we need to do is just set back just a moment, go ahead, give ourselves a break.
Yeah. And I
what's
think
your
that's.
what's your go-to when you don't feel well?
I'll just go to bed with a bottle and get drunk. No, not really. Not really. Um, yeah, it's how you feel at the time. I mean, I've been pretty ill for the last 6 weeks or so. All over Christmas, I've had this rotten, stinking cold. We tested for the COVID, and it wasn't that. It was a rotten, stinking cold. It wasn't flu. It was a rotten, stinking cold, um, full of snot, coughing, and
Yeah.
not being able to sleep because you're bloody coughing your eye up all night. It's just try to get hold of the doctor. Oh, it's a cold. We can't. You don't need
There's nothing we can
antibiotics.
do.
Yeah,
And
take some
that's where,
paracetamol. Take some paracetamol.
yeah,
Having been on the phone for an hour and 7 minutes to get through, to be told by a receptionist you don't need antibiotics. Take some paracetamol.
well, see, there's a perfect example. That's a simple illness
Yeah,
that you couldn't get help for. I could help you because I believe using some essential oils, diffusers, and some other things can help with colds. But here, that's a perfect example of here's a simple.
you're frozen. So, so my remedy, I tried all sorts. We tried the paracetamol, we tried the Lemsips, we tried some rum. Rum was fairly effective, but it's it's just the system's fairly broken. And so to be told by a receptionist you can't have any paracetamol, you have to take um, 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 you have to take some paracetamol. You can't have any antibiotics. Let's just go back to me until Cheryl comes back in. The internet's playing up tonight a bit. I think I'm going out okay at the moment. But all these things we can do to improve our lives. It's it's looking after yourself, and that's what the key factor to this whole thing is to look after number one first. And if you're living a fairly healthy lifestyle, you're eating a fairly well balanced diet. You're not overeating. You're taking the right amount of um, uh, water intake every day. I'm on the old Adam's ale at the moment. Because it's kind of, I've been struggling a little bit. Really have been struggling this last 6 weeks or so. I mean, all over Christmas and New Year, I was feeling really, really rough. But I'm just coming out the other end of it now. And I've not had a cold like it before. Now, I've got some theories on that. I think I think it's down to being locked up for a couple of years and not being out and what's naming, beefing up the immune system by catching all sorts of nasty stuff. So, Cheryl's back. Yeah,
Sorry, technical issues.
technical issues. We can work through it. It's what it's all about. We have
Yeah,
the technology to be able to get on with it.
I know. It's all good.
Yes. So I was just
But
saying about looking after number one, looking after yourself and trying to have a decent, well balanced diet, taking on the right amount of fluids every day, um, and generally just looking out for yourself because if you go crook yourself, then you can't help other people. Basically, I mean, it's been pretty miserable over Christmas and New Year. We've both been down with it, myself and the Duchess. I mean, she started off suffering from it. It was her own fault. I mean, she went off to babysit the kids and the grandkids, and they were full of colds and everything. She caught it and then gave it to me, which is very generous of her. We've both been suffering all over Christmas, and we're just about coming out the back end of it now. But we have I mean, because we're retired, we have I mean, she's a great, fantastic cook, and we have a really well balanced diet. I mean, fish and meat and vegetables and all of that good stuff. So, and that's us. But it's it's still we still got it,
still,
and that's
sure.
because I think we've been locked up for 2 years, where we've not been mixing with people. We've not had the normal sort of colds and flus that's knocking around. Um, so, so our immune system's been a bit degraded, and then all of a sudden, there's a little bug goes around and it levels you.
I think that's true because you think about um, my past profession was doing hair, and there wasn't hardly any clients that I didn't hug. I was constantly hugging, touching people. And so they would come in sick. I would never get sick because I was exposed to so many germs. Same thing that, when a child is out and they're in the dirt and they're eating
Yeah,
dirt and they're playing stuff, and people are like, that's bad. No, it's good. They're building their immune system.
yeah. People don't quite get that, do they? That's what it's really about. It's just building up that immune system, which is. I mean, I used to travel into London every day on a commute, hour each way on the train, and it's always all year round people coughing and spluttering, and it was just oh, I don't ever want to go back to doing that sort of commute again. Um, but I never caught anything because my immune system was way up.
Right.
Um,
And we weren't, and that's with everyone. I mean, that's around the world that
yeah,
everybody was locked up, everybody was touching or around people, so their immune system went down. So, one of the things that, what are the things that build your immune system? And you're right, eating right, feeding yourself, getting movement, drinking enough water, because I think in the winter time it tends to be a little more difficult to get enough water in. We don't tend to be as thirsty in the winter as we are in the summer months, or we don't notice it. So I highly recommend that you make sure that you're getting enough water in and sleep, rest.
yeah,
What getting, and that rest can be, some people need 7 hours and some people need 10 hours. So knowing what your body personally needs is key. And then there are other things. One of my favorite things is Corella algae for building. It gives you a lot of, it's a food, it's not a
mm,
supplement. You can get it in a powder form or like little baby aspirins, so you can swallow it. But there's huge amount of benefits because that's something that's also kind of grabs on to the environmental toxins or things, and then you expel it out.
mm. Well, when I get reincarnated next time, I'm coming back as a cat. My cat, my cat sleeps about 20 hours a day.
Yeah, that's the
He's
good life.
great. I love him to bits. I mean, at the moment he gets a lot of his sleep interrupted. We have a puppy, and
Yes, I saw.
he's a proper little toad. He was at the vets on Monday and had the old
Oh, good.
and
That's
it
good.
and it hasn't stopped him.
Give him a month.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the vets had him down as a serial humper, so, so we had to do something. I mean, it was getting embarrassing. Anybody that comes round, he's there, up against the leg, giving it one. Yeah, he tried it on the cat. He tried it on Artie the ship's cat. Came off second best. It was hilarious. He tried to give him one. Oh, whop, whop, and he went flying across the room.
The cat was
But he
like,
doesn't
"Nope,
go.
we're not."
He doesn't go close to him nowadays. It's just out of swiping range. But yeah, I mean, they're a lot of fun together actually.
Yeah, and
What
animal.
go?
There you
Yeah,
think from our animal of how movement. What are they doing? They're moving. Other than cats, the cats love the,
yeah,
but cats move but movement in your day. And I think, we're doing things virtually, we're doing a lot of things sitting down. And so
yeah,
making sure that every so often you're just getting up and just shaking it off, walking around. stretching is
Yeah.
helpful, because now we know with only 10 minutes a day that you're growing brain cells. You're growing new brain cells in the hippocampus. So you're getting smarter. So if that doesn't encourage people, if you don't want to get smarter, then don't exercise. But if you want to get smarter, exercise at least 10 minutes a day.
I'm doing my best.
And it doesn't have to be like, we think of, like, I do some really intense things, but you can do simple things for 10 minutes. You can go for a
Yeah.
walk, turn on 2 songs, dance it out. You can just, whatever it is, but moving. And the older you get, keeping that movement is key, because your balance,
Yeah.
your chance of falling. So it's things like, even sitting. So sitting and then standing and then sitting again,
Yeah.
that's building your leg muscle. I mean, it doesn't have to be really complicated.
I mean, this time a year ago, and a couple of months prior to this, a year ago, my body had seized up. I was in a really bad place. We'd been locked down. I hadn't been able to move an awful lot. I'm riddled with rheumatoid arthritis and
Mm.
osteoarthritis, where I just abused my body for so many years. So my body had seized up. This time last year, I started off with massage therapy, and it took about 9 months to unlock my body. And initially it was really painful, with the deep massages that we were doing, just to try and free up some of the muscles are just literally locked up. And
Like the
um,
Tin Man.
yeah, I mean, worse than him. Probably I've gone rusty and seized. But I've been
So
working every
no
week,
medication.
an hour every week for 9 months, and now go every other week, for an hour session. And my um, massage therapist, Louise, has worked wonders. I mean, look, I couldn't do that this time last year. I was doing that, and that was about as best as I could do.
I kind of
Now,
remember that.
yeah, I mean, I was in a state. During leader, in August, I was easing off quite a bit then, but this time last year I was in poor state of health. Really was bad. But we now we're in a position where I can go and do some stuff. I can take the mat for a walk, um, and yeah, I'm feeling physically
So did you
better.
only do massage for your rheumatoid arthritis?
Now I'm on a pill as well for it, and a couple of other things.
Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
whole
there's a whole
process.
piece around it. So I've been on. I started off on methotrexate quite a few years ago now, because I've had it for, I don't know, best part of 10 years, um, and now I'm down to one pill a day, which is called leflunomide, and that just keeps it at bay. Occasionally I have a flare, I have a rheumatoid flare, and I pop a few brufen, and that generally makes it go away after a couple of days. But
Can I ask, when
yeah,
you have a flare, do you know what causes your flare up? Is it a food? Is it a
no.
stress? Nothing.
I mean,
No.
stress. What's stress? I'm retired. I don't have stress. I
Oh,
have
a little bit.
I yeah. I mean, I have this attitude towards um, worry and stress, and it's simple. It's a really difficult mindset to put yourself in, but I've mastered it. So if you can't do something about something, there is no point in worrying about it. If you can do something about something, then you can do it. So there's no point in worrying about it. And that's
Very
a
true.
mindset that is difficult to master. But once you've mastered it, you don't have any stress. There's no point in stressing over something that you can do something about. And there's no point in
Yeah,
stressing over something you can't do anything about.
You're right. Most of the time we're stressing over a story that we're telling ourselves about something in the future that hasn't even happened,
Yeah,
and we're already playing it out.
yeah. So it's taken quite a bit of time to get that mindset, but you just take a condor moment, have a quick, take a step back, look at it. Can I do something about it? Yes, do it. Can I do something about it? No, don't do it. You can't. There's nothing. There's no point in worrying about it. So that's my mindset for worry and stress, and it works. So I mean, I've got a few things coming up in the next couple of weeks. Um, I've got a Burns night, and I'm being president for the night. So,
And what is
so
Burns Night?
Burns night, Rabbie Burns. He's the beard that wrote many poems and songs back in a while ago. I've got to do a bit more reading up on him. But I'm being president, and then we've got about 80 odd people in at this dinner, and he's celebrating his life. He was on the 25th of January, but in fact, I'm going to two. I've got one on the 21st on HMS Victory, and I've got the other one at the Yacht Club on the 28th, the week after, and that's the one I'm doing the president of the of the dinner. So I've got people doing the Selkirk Grace. I've got a vicar doing that. I've got somebody doing the address to the haggis. So they pipe the haggis in and say a few words, and then they stab the beastie and you have a drop of whiskey. Um, and then I've got somebody doing the immortal memory. And then a gentleman does an address to the lassies, and then you get a lassie does the reply for the lassies. So, and then I just have to bang me gabble and call people in as and when they need to. So it should be a good evening,
Yeah.
but I'm not worried about it. I'm not stressing over it, and
No.
yeah,
A
it
little
might
bit
upset a
of,
few jocks.
I was gonna say, I think sometimes, in those little stress moments, maybe it's like, oh, I'm gonna speak, or oh, I'm gonna present something. That little stress actually is good because it's like
Yeah,
excitement.
yeah. It's more anticipation, I think. It's standing up in front of a crowd. I mean, this particular dinner at the moment, I think we've got about 80 booked in for it. So 80 people is nothing. I was stood up in front of a crowd of a couple of thousand and gobbed off. So I don't have a problem in public speaking. Unaccustomed
No.
as I am to public speaking.
Yes, and
So
then as the old saying goes, you just imagine them all naked and you'll feel better.
oh no, no, no. Depends on the audience. Yeah. Don't think of the audience as naked because some of them you don't want to see naked anyway. But that's what I'm doing in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm not concerned. I'm looking forward to it. I'll have a little bit of anticipation beforehand and a little bit of nerves, but that just makes you better.
Yeah,
I
but what
think.
you're saying made me think it's like when what's the fact that's happening? That's the circumstance.
Yeah,
And what are my thoughts around that? That's what drives your action. And so
yeah,
when your thoughts, like you said, it doesn't stress me out, you're looking forward to doing it. So therefore your action is going to be different than if you were like, oh, I feel I might be judged, or I'm worried that I'll mess it all up, or whatever. And then that is also your action. So it's what
yeah.
are the things in
Well,
those
I've been
situations?
threatening to do it for a few years now, and I've always had a jock that puts his hand up. You're not doing it. I'll do it. But none of them have come forward this year, so how can I
It's
do it?
your turn.
It's
Yeah.
my turn, yeah. So, but having said that, I mean, I've done my DNA, And funny enough, I've got 47% English in me. I've got
I am.
35% Scottish. Where's that come from? I can't find it in my family tree at the moment. So I've got to find where the jock element has come into it. And then I've got some Norwegian and Danish in there, Swedish in there, and some weird reason I've got 2% Welsh.
Oh, I have Welsh.
Yeah, I don't know where that's come from. So I think somebody's been mucking about with my DNA.
Well, yeah.
You never know.
No, you
I,
have to
I,
go back. It's like here they take these buildings that are almost crumbling. They're from the 1800s, and they're going back and looking at the history of how those people, put that wood, built those homes with
mm,
no tools other than their hands, and so it's kind of the same thing.
yeah.
It's like looking back at our history and kind of pulling it apart and seeing where was that person and how did I get that?
But it's a fascinating game looking at your family's ancestry. Um, so
Yeah.
I got into that a while back, and my mother did the same, and she was on it, and she did her DNA, and I'm right in there as a parent, and we can see. So I know she's my mother.
You weren't the milkman's kid?
Might have been, but but I look far too much like my old man not to be.
Yes. So growing up, I say that because, my sister and I would tease each other. Who was the mistake? Who was the milkman's kid?
Yeah,
Because it's what siblings do to each other.
yeah. I've got I'm the oldest. I wouldn't have been. I had an older brother. He died 16 hours after he was born. Um, and that's another story altogether. But so it made me the oldest. And I have a sister a year younger than me, and she's just riddled with jealousy. And then I've got another sister that's 3 years younger. Um, she was born in '63, in that winter of '63, and yeah, I can remember that happening. I was 5 at the time, so that was a tough old winter. Um, but that's the siblings for you. I mean, you can't choose your family. They say.
No, but you can choose your extended family.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we're doing pretty well. I don't see them that often. In fact, I hardly ever see them nowadays. They live up further up in the country. I see my mother occasionally. She's still knocking around. The old man died when I was in Kosovo. I got to hear about it a couple of weeks after the funeral. I had what we call a bluey off of my sister. It's an airmail letter that they could send for free to the military. So the old man died in 2000 while I was serving in Kosovo. So
Hmm. And I
so it
was going to
wasn't that
say, when you
wasn't that
talk
close.
the places that you've been and the people that you've been around, and you can see some of that PTSD, did you recognize something was wrong before that became, a regular conversation for people? You seeing it, and how has it changed from not really calling it PTSD to now calling it? Or do you think it
Mm.
has improved?
I I've seen an awful lot of stuff in my army career. I mean, I joined the army in 1974, left in 2018, did multiple operational tours, and my first one was in Northern Ireland in 1977. Um, saw an awful lot of action on that tour. Saw my first dead body back then, um, and back then there was nothing like what we do nowadays. We do TRIM, which is trauma incident management. So there was none of that. It was just sort of have one of these, which is what's that? That's a man uphill. You just get on with it back then, and I've always done that. Always got on with it. And you talk about it with your mates. That's how it's always been dealt with. More recently, when we've been into places like Afghanistan, the situation changed. They brought in this thing called TRIM, which is trauma incident management. So when the guys have been in a traumatic incident, say they've been involved in a bomb blast where somebody's lost their life, a team will come in about 72 hours after the incident. They'll assess everybody that's been involved with it, either directly or indirectly, and work out who needs to have a one-to-one assessment or a group session or an overall brief, and then they'll assess everybody, put them on a score sheet, tell them that if they are struggling, then they just can seek help whenever. But the team will come back in 30 days later to see how people have got over it, how they've moved on or not, and if they're still struggling, then they can signpost them onto professional help, and then they do a reassessment, and then they'll come back in at the 3-month point and reassess everybody again and see by which time everybody should have moved on and recovered from that incident.
So when you say that, I think, are they holding back? Are they feeling free to say I'm struggling, or do they still feel like they have to pretend that they're okay?
It's been a long, slow progress or process, destigmatizing that fact that because they see it as weakness, but it's not.
Yes.
So when they stand teams up to deploy, they start 6 months out, and as part of that pre-deployment training, they run through these scenarios. They run through that process. They encourage people to talk about their feelings, and what they see and what they've done, and they let them know that it's okay not to be okay, and if you are having those sort of thoughts, then talk to somebody about it early. The earlier you can deal with it, the easier it is to deal with it. The problems we've got, nowadays, the Falklands War was 40 years ago last year. We're still seeing veterans coming from the Falklands that are still having problems, that have that PTSD. Now, there was 2 trains of thought on it, and there's been some research into those that were flown back after after the Falklands was recaptured, and then there's those that came back on the ships. So there was a quite a lot that were flown back sort of straight away, and then they had big bands and all the rest of it when they arrived back. They seem to ones that have been suffering more than the guys that were coming back on the ships. The guys that were coming back on the ships, they dealt with different, because they couldn't do an awful lot during the day. They would have a muster parade in the mornings, and they'd do a little bit of work in the mornings, and then they were free to go and do what they wanted for the rest of the day. Read books or whatever, and they were encouraged to talk about. So those guys are the ones that have suffered less.
Yeah, because they had a group to work with.
Because they also had 2 or 3 weeks coming back on the ships.
Yeah.
So they were able to. Cheryl's gone off, obviously, because 1 minute she's there, and we went off. Boom! It just that was the server off the platform that we're using, coming up with messages while I was trying to reconnect with it. So that was a challenge, wasn't it? Technical issues, they happen. Looks like we got Cheryl back. So I'll tell you what happened there. The server went down. The Ecamm Live server went down. Gone. Oh, and now, no, it wasn't you. But you're muted. You've gone mute again. Oh no. So that was a bit of a challenge. I don't know what's going on. No, still can't hear you. So it must have been what happened when we first started. So do you want to have a quick play with your doobie what's it thinking me, Bob, while I rattle on to talk about what we were doing before? So where did I get to? Yeah, we were talking about guys that were struggling. The guys that came back up on the ships struggled a lot less than the guys that flew straight back. So nowadays what they do when we're coming out of operational theatres, they take us into Cyprus and they're generally there for 2 or 3 days decompressing. They give them a few beers, they give them briefings and stuff like that, and they're down the beaches and generally a few days of enjoying themselves. Now, put my hand up. 7 operational tours. I never went through decompression once for one reason or another. I ended up coming back on different flights. I came back on an Aeromed flight. The team came back on a flight because we had to be extracted to go and do another job. So I never got any decompression time at all, unfortunately or fortunately. But I haven't really been affected, although I've seen an awful lot of stuff. Because I've been a welfare officer, because I've done the right sort of courses and stuff like that, then I have recognised the signs and the symptoms and got the help when I needed it. So there you go. So this evening's been a bit of a challenge because I should have had a couple of guests in. I guess one of the guests hasn't been able to make it. Cheryl's just coming back in. We're having all sorts of fun tonight. So if you've enjoyed the conversation, just pop us something down in the chat box and say, yeah, hi. We've enjoyed it. So let's see if we can get Cheryl back in, if she's got sound. How are we doing?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, you're
Oh,
back.
good. I was going to say, oh, bloody hell.
Oh, good grief. So I was just saying that nowadays when we come out of operations, we've got some feedback.
Uh-oh.
Have you got a mic up? A speaker up?
I don't think so.
I love having technical issues. They're great fun.
Me too. It makes it more entertaining.
It's all a big test. So I was just saying that nowadays when we come out of operational theatres, they take us into Cyprus. We have decompression. So you're there for sort of 3 or 4 days. You're fed beer, you're sitting around on the beach, you're getting a few briefings every other day or whatever, and you're assessed, and then you're flown home, and then etc. I was just saying, I never, having gone through 7 operational tours in recent years, I've never gone through decompression for one reason or another. But when I went into welfare, I was because I'd done all the right courses. I understand of what's been going on. For me, I've been able to deal with my issues the right way because I have seen an awful lot of stuff, particularly on the last couple of operations that I did.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what were the things like, did you recognize when it was too much?
Yeah, I recognised some of the stuff that was going on. And funny enough, it wasn't until after I left. I left in 2018. It was 2020. Um, I started to have a bit of a wobble. I started getting really emotional at seeing silly things on the telly. I mean, I could watch a cartoon and well up, thinking this isn't normal. Or I see a sad story on a film or something, and yeah. So I contacted the old
So,
dog.
oh, good.
Yeah, he directed me or to talk something or other. He's a psychologist, so basically signposted me on to the right sort of people. Unfortunately for me, it didn't really work because the guys I saw, and I saw a couple of them, they didn't understand what I'd been through. So they weren't really able to help that way. What um, what I did do is um, I contacted some mates that had been through the stuff I'd been through, had a bit of a chat, and yeah, managed to sort myself out that way. So that was good. Um, but it was good to see the way that um, the NHS deal with it. And unfortunately, although they weren't able to help me per se, because they hadn't been in the military, they didn't understand that sort of. They did help uh, a little bit, and I was able to sort of go and see some friends and chat up through it, and I'm I'm okay. I still get a little bit emotional when I see something soppy on the telly, but, but you just cope with it, don't you?
Oh, what? You're human?
I am, yeah. Underneath
Yeah.
underneath his gorgeous exterior,
Well, and I was going to say too, like, I find that the animal companions now are extremely helpful with the
yeah.
PTSD. And just
No,
not necessarily always having a trained one, but those are super great. But if you don't, just having that animal, because that.
oh, we're losing it again. Something's going on. My internet's gone queer. Um, funny you should say that. I I had a group on a few weeks back before Christmas. Service Dogs UK, and this is a charity that was set up to marry up a rescue dog with a veteran with some complex PTSD, and they go through about a year of training to accredit the dog and the veteran to recognise that they've got a problem, and once the dog's accredited, they've got the same rights as a guide dog for the blind. So they can go everywhere with a veteran. They can go in and out of anywhere. So, and that's a great charity. And they've to date they've only been going for about 4 years, I think, and they've already had about 35 veterans come through with dogs. So
I know.
it's a
And don't
great
you
great
feel
charity.
like, for me, it feels like that should be a part of, if they were in the service, if they served, for us, our country, your country, whatever, I really feel like that's something that should be, you know, helped. Like, we shouldn't, some of the stuff that we have to do is um, outside of what they should just get it. We shouldn't
Mm,
have to have all these civilians, all these people doing these things. This should be a part of what we
yeah.
provide.
So funny if you're talking about that. Martin there is sat with Ollie. He's been through it. He's in his, I think, his second or coming up to his third year. And Ollie has just re-qualified, if I'm not wrong, in getting his accreditation. So he's one of the veterans that has benefited from this process.
Yeah, I have seen so like I find it like the most beautiful thing because I had a client a few years back that for many years she's had this horse area, and it is specifically for veterans, for people who have suffered some form of PTSD, and they do healing with the horses. And I just think whether it's a horse, a dog, or whatever is, our animals just bring so much comfort.
Mm. So there you go. But Martin's just confirmed that Ollie's re-qualified. So good on you, Martin. Are you going to be, just a quick question to Martin, are you going to be bringing Ollie to the big breakfast? And are you going to bring all your boys from your area down for the big breakfast?
And then are you going to come pick me up on the way?
We've got our regiment. Martin was in my regiment. I believe he was a poacher as well. Regiment is funding a big breakfast, and it's the whole idea is to get guys together, all come together at different venues throughout the country where we've got veterans and serving guys as well, for a big breakfast, and the regiment will pay for the breakfast, which is great. So looking forward to it, and that's next month. Hopefully we're going to get a big crowd together on the what's name. But there you go. Yes, we will be there with 4 spangles. Excellent. So there's another 4 to put on the list. Brilliant. So there you go. That's another one that we've got on the books. A working dog that's entitled to all the benefits of the same as a guide dog for the blind.
Yeah, I think that is long overdue. And
Absolutely.
here in the United States, we have that too. And then there are some groups that take just dogs that have been in maybe the Humane Society, and they train them as well. So I think there's some criterias, but it's amazing. And you just think about when you pet your cat and the purring happens.
Yeah.
And it's just honestly the most calming thing. Or a lick on the face from your dog.
Not sure about a lick on the face from the dog, but certainly, certainly, Artie the Sheep's cat. He's a funny bugger. He's a British short hair. He's a big lad. He's quite a big cat. He's about 7 kilos. He won't come and sit on you. He'll come and sit by you, and he likes a scratch underneath the chin and his ears, what's naming. But yeah, when he's had enough, he'll go. But he is very soothing. I mean, he'll come and pounce on you at sort of 4 o'clock in the morning, demanding feeding. He's a bit like Simon's cat. I don't know if you've seen the cartoon Simon's Cat. He's like that. 4 o'clock in the morning wants feeding.
Yeah, that's nighttime for them, I guess.
Yeah. He'll also bring mice in. What else has he brought in? He's brought a pigeon.
Presents.
Yeah, presents. A sparrow. He's done well to catch a sparrow. He's had a couple of
Yeah,
pigeons.
well, mine caught a bat.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. No, it wasn't.
I'm waiting for him to catch a seagull. So there you go. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit today. It's been really great. We've had some challenges, obviously, today with the internet going up and down.
You know, as they say, it's not if, it's when will you have tech problems.
Yeah, one day we won't. But there you go. So anybody that's still out there watching, thank you, thank you, thank you for being there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheryl, as always, you've been an absolute star. Um, Thank you again for joining me this evening, and I'll try and catch you live soon. I missed it last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and if you're looking for all things wellness, I'm at Cheryl Wolf, WOLF. I am the big bad wolf. I'm very short, so that's why I like to say that. But yeah, come and join me on my channel. But I want to thank you for bringing this, for talking about the taboo topics, for bringing it forward and continuing this on, because it's definitely needed. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't touch on the suicide yet, but I don't know what it's like in America, but I think it's fairly similar. There are a lot of veterans taking their own lives at the moment, and they've just started something fairly new in this country. They're actually recording um, whether it's a veteran that's taken their life. So we're starting to see the numbers coming through of veterans that have been taking their own lives. So they're slightly distinguishing from where civilians are doing it. Um, so what's Martin say here? Let's just pop that up. Martin says, I think it's important to say that it's not only veterans with PTSD. Yes, absolutely. Um, they can get help with mental health, but also depression and anxiety. Op Courage. Op Courage is something that's going on in this country. It's it's run by the NHS, but the people that are running the Op Courage is um, particularly veterans or serving people that are working for the NHS to identify veterans that have the issues and are better able to get the right help at the right time for the veterans. So thanks
Yeah.
for that, Martin.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was going to say here also, and I'm sure you have it too, is just through the last few years, our medical staff is definitely suffering with PTSD because of all that they have had to endure. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's been very difficult. And I think anyone, you know, it doesn't have to be, he's right. And anxiety and all these things. And that's part of what I'm trying to do is help people feel better, feel lighter. And it's not just losing weight, it's letting go of some of those heavy rocks that we're carrying around in our minds, and learning to give ourselves grace and like even the hard parts of ourselves, because there's, I know you're perfect, but I'm not. But it's like, it is it's not a destination. It's a constant daily work. And
Journey.
it's how do we enjoy this journey as we go along? How can we make this journey better for someone else?
Yeah. I did notice when I was a welfare officer, a lot of guys that were coming through that had issues. They weren't to do with the military, they were to do when they were during their childhood. And I think there's an awful lot of people that have childhood traumas that affect them in later life.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that is a definite, like, um, if you didn't suffer, you're very lucky, because there's so many people that in the old days, that was your parent and how they treated you, whether that be right or wrong, you know. And now we have things that are
Yeah.
different. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of um, different ways that people have suffered.
I think Martin makes a really good point here, actually. Depression and anxiety often gets misdiagnosed as PTSD.
Very true. Very, very true. But I also think the other thing is that like you had the illness or you have the rheumatoid arthritis. So having something with a chronic illness or having a sudden health scare like myself when I was told I had a serious illness. I mean, somebody should have immediately said, "Let's get you some counseling." I had to do that on my own. I didn't, that's a very, if you've ever been diagnosed with something, that's a very frightening thing. I mean, we all know we don't know when we're going, but when someone says, hey, that's a very in your face.
So, I think we've covered an awful
Yeah.
lot this evening, and I think
We could just talk all day, but they don't want to hear us.
We could. No, I'm sure they do. but I think we'll put them out of their misery. So Cheryl, thank you once again. Thank you, Martin, for your input. That's very, very helpful. So until next week, when we've got the live quiz on a Tuesday, remember that kicks off at 8 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. It's going to be a general knowledge quiz next week. The following week, might do another Harry Potter special. If you haven't done the quizzes yet, you can go back and do them. And all you need to do is once you've added up your scores, just put your score in the chat box so we can see how well you did. And obviously next Thursday, we'll have another everyday conversation regarding mental health. So until next week, thank you so much.